G'day guys and welcome back to your English Aussie. Today we're going to go through an updated ultimate chip strategy where I'm going to cover all the chips, all the best game weeks to play them, whether or not you've played your chips already. I'll cover all the different strategies that you can cover. If I don't cover a specific strategy unique to your team, please post below in the comments and I will do a detailed review of your team and answer in detail below in the comments to help you guys. Hopefully I cover everything. Let's jump straight into it. And we're going to start just a quick overview of the chips. Bench boost, triple captain, free hit, assistant manager and wildcard. We'll go through each one of these and we're first just going to start with the current blank and double game weeks that are happening at the moment and the landscape of FPL and what you need to watch out for over the upcoming weeks in order to know when the best week is to play your chips. Credits to Ben Krellin for this sort of planner here, and what you can see here is in game week 25, which is this current game week, Liverpool are doubling versus versus Wolves and Aston Villa are doubling versus Ipswich and Liverpool. So 2 double game weeks this week. If you are already on your assistant manager chip and you likely either had a Slot or Moyes last week, I would suggest again keeping Slot if you had Slot from last week. And if you have Moyes, I would still suggest going to Arnie Slot. I think this is the best option. I thought that was the best option in game week 24. And I recommend that you move to him for game week 25. For game week 26, we will cover that once game week 25 ends. You obviously want to see the landscape of the teams and what's happening before I recommend an assistant manager pick for 26. But stay tuned to my live streams and all my content coming up where I'll make sure to discuss that in detail. Moving forward throughout the rest of the season, you can see that now the round 4 FA Cup matches have been played. You can see the teams that are still in for round 5. We're about to talk about them on the next section. And the teams that have, those are the teams that have the potential to make it through to the FA Cup semi-final, which will be played in game week 34. Those teams that make it to the FA Cup semi-final will blank in that game week 34. At the moment, Liverpool, Tottenham, Chelsea and Everton all playing each other will not blank in 34. All those 4 teams will definitely have a game in game week 34. So for those of you with multiple Liverpool players, that is obviously going to be beneficial for that time. Liverpool also do have a really nice fixture run after that, which we'll also go on to talk about that next. So this is the sort of landscape. I would expect that those teams that do blank in 34 will likely their doubles be moved to one of 31, 32, 33 or 36. Those are the game weeks where there are free midweek fixtures. 31 and 32 obviously have European quarterfinals, but lots of those teams that are in that may make the FA Cup semi-final won't be playing in those European slots, so therefore may have a free game week there. The blanks for game week 29, which are Liverpool, Aston Villa, Newcastle and Crystal Palace. Obviously the Liverpool-Aston Villa game has been moved to game week 25. And the Newcastle Crystal Palace game is likely to be in one of 31, 32 or 33, which will land Newcastle and Palace with a double game week in one of those weeks. That is potentially an option for your triple captain if you haven't already used it. Hey guys, just a quick reminder, if you haven't smashed that like button, subscribe to the channel yet, and you are enjoying this content, please give a like and a subscribe to the channel. It really helps my channel grow and really helps me have the energy to keep producing these videos for you guys. I really appreciate all of you guys that watch the videos, and if you can watch to the end, that really helps again with the algorithm. Thanks very much. Let's get straight back into the video. Now just sort of a little bit of a recap and a bit of a easier to view screen. Double game week 25, Liverpool doubling against Wolves and Aston Villa doubling against Ipswich and Liverpool. Blanking in 29 will be Liverpool, Villa, Newcastle and Crystal Palace. So you need to have a little think about your team structure over the next 4 or 5 weeks, and how, if you are looking to go through game week 29 without using a chip such as free hit, which is something I am looking to do and do suggest is probably the best option for most teams, you'd be looking to move some of those Liverpool, Villa, Newcastle, Crystal Palace players out of your side so that you can field an 11 for game week 29. Obviously, you can still have those 4 players on the bench. So if those 4 players are on the bench, you still want to keep like a Mo Salah, Alexander Isak, maybe an Alisson or a Gordon or Munoz, etc. Those are the players that you can leave on the bench. Maybe if you've accumulated a lot of price in those players, you want to be keeping them in your team because you don't want to lose that team value by selling them and bringing them back in later. So definitely try and keep those players that have the largest team value that you've accumulated. Now, as mentioned, the teams that are not blanking in game week 34 are Liverpool and Tottenham, who play each other and are both already out of the FA Cup, and Chelsea and Everton, who play each other and are both already out of the FA Cup. So all 4 of those teams will play in 34, so that bodes well if you do have a Palmer, a Pickford, Mykolenko, Salahs, Trents, etc. All of these sort of players are going to not have blank game weeks in 34. So outside of the Liverpool lads, Tottenham, Chelsea and Everton will be playing every week all the way through to game week 38. So you won't have to worry about moving them in and out of your team. The other teams that are already out of the cup are Arsenal, Leicester, Southampton, West Ham and Brentford. And I've highlighted Brighton and Wolves here because of the teams that are still playing in the FA Cup, these are 2 teams that I think could go out in the next round, and that would mean that the Leicester versus Wolves in 34 will go ahead, and the West Ham versus Brighton in 34 will go ahead. Brighton take on Newcastle in the next round of the FA Cup, which I think will be a bit of a tricky game for them, and Wolves are taking on Bournemouth, who I think might get the win there. That is also something to think about going forwards. Cunha's definitely somebody that we can look at. Wolves' fixture run get really nice from 29. So if they do go out to Bournemouth in round 5, that makes him an even better option for the back half of the season. Now, as we mentioned about blanks and doubles, obviously there's the small blank in game week 29, which we spoke about. The Newcastle v Crystal Palace game is the game that hasn't been reorganised yet. That could go into 33, the double game week. We also think that potentially the blanks from the FA Cup semi-final and game week 34 could also be moved into either game week 33 or game week 36. There is also the potential that they could go into game weeks 31 or 32 as well. So again, just recap on that landscape. Moving on again, these are the teams in that FA Cup semi-final that potentially could blank in game week 34. What I would say is Aston Villa and Man City both have quite an easy draw in the 5th round. So it's likely that both of them will get through to the quarter-finals. And then if either of them win their quarter-final draws, so just to note, Aston Villa have Cardiff in round 5 and Man City have Plymouth. So if those 2 teams win in the 5th round, they'll move on to the quarterfinals. If either of them win in the quarterfinals and make the semis, that fixture will be a blank in game week 34, which will mean one of those 2 teams will double at some other point in the season. So I think that's very likely to be a blank in 34. Newcastle v Ipswich, I just think Newcastle are probably the other strongest team in the FA Cup, along with Ipswich, who are also obviously not one of the stronger teams, but also still in the FA Cup. So you've got 2 teams who are giving you the potential to make it through the next 2 rounds. I would say probably similarly with Bournemouth and Man United, but they have a few trickier draws, with Bournemouth being drawn against Wolves and Man United being drawn against Fulham in the 5th round. Crystal Palace also have quite a nice draw in the 5th round, so are likely to make the quarterfinals. They're one of the only other teams that have a non-Premier League side in the next round. They actually play Millwall in the next round, so I expect them to progress to the quarterfinals, and then depending on that draw is whether or not they can make it to the semis. So I think most likely I would say Villa, City, blank, then possible Newcastle, Ipswich, Palace, Arsenal, and Bournemouth, Man United are probably the three that I see as the next most likely, with the others less likely to be blanking in 34, based off the fixtures. So just bear those in mind for the time being as we go through. There are obviously some key points in the season where we'll understand more, and we will definitely go through that. And maybe I'll just talk through here now the important dates and strategy to think about as you go through the season. So I think sort of as we discussed, blank game week 29, ideally you can use your transfers to manage through that game week. And over the next 4 or 5 weeks, you can move the Liverpool, Newcastle, Palace, Villa players out of your team, keep a few on the bench, and be able to put an 11 in game week 29 without having to use your free hit. But given blank game week 34, as we sort of mentioned, now Liverpool, Chelsea, Tottenham, Everton, all guaranteed not to be blanking. Quite a lot of players in our teams are made up from sort of those teams. And if we look at potentially the sort of fixture difficulty swings around that time and what players we'd like to have in our team over that period, you can see between 32 and 38, Liverpool have some great attacking fixtures. So you'd probably like to have a few of their players in your team, which means maybe you have 3 Liverpool in game week 34 already. That builds on your team. Manchester City have some nice fixtures who will be blanking, so that's definitely something to consider. Newcastle potentially is coming to the end of their nice fixtures, so if they do blank in 34 and that Ipswich game perhaps goes back into 31 to 33, then they're sort of 35 on to 38 and not fantastic fixtures, and maybe you do want to come out of those Newcastle assets, and it's not such a problem if they do blank. Wolves again have some really nice fixtures. They're likely to not be blanking in 34, and perhaps Cunha might be an option going forwards. So those are just some things to consider around 34. Potentially, you might be able to manage your way through that as well, and that does leave you with a nice option of possibly being able to use your free hit in maybe what we would consider if there's an extra double game week that goes in there. Maybe some of the blanks get moved to 32, some get moved to 33, some and there is an extra double game week. Maybe then we can use that free hit to attack a double game week where some of these teams that do make the semi-final of the FA Cup may double. So that's definitely something to consider. These are my sort of attacking and defensive fixture difficulty ratings that I've sort of created using my own FDR, which is a bit more accurate than the FPL one. So feel free to take some screenshots of these, have a look at these different FDRs and sort of make your own decisions moving forwards to that on what sort of players you'd like in your team at that stage. Then next up is game week 30. Now I think game week 30 is a really crucial time in the season. After game week 30, and as we saw if we look back at that sort of transfer planner, game week 29, the quarterfinals are played, the FA Cup quarterfinals. So we'll know at game week 30, we'll know who is in the semi-final of the FA Cup. We will likely know what double game weeks will host those blanks from 34, and that is the time where I think is when you make your strategy calls. And I think that makes it even more important to try and manage your way through game week 29 without using that free hit, because there's a potential that after that the FA Cup quarterfinals in 29, and when those double game weeks are scheduled, things might change, and you've got to be able to be flexible in FPL to be able to attack and use your chips in the best way possible. And by managing your way through game week 29, once game week 30 hits, the FA Cup quarterfinals are over, we'll know who's in the semi-finals, we'll know who's blanking in 34, likely the fixtures will get arranged for the double game weeks in 31 to 33 or 36, and therefore you'll be able to make a decision for what week you wildcard, triple captain, assistant manage, bent boost, and free hit. So I think my two key strategies regardless of sort of the chip usage you have at the moment, would be if there's the majority of blanks from 34 are organised into 33, then I would look to wildcard between 30 and 32. Depending on your team's needs, you can also use some transfers after that, and then bench boost in 33 if that's the big double game week. Then in 34, I'd use my free hit unless there are multiple double game weeks between 31 to 33, and then in game week 36, I would look to use my triple captain or assistant manager, whichever one of those chips you haven't used yet. Again, if you've used neither, I think the triple captain is best used this week in game week 25 on Mo Salah. And then that will allow you to use your AM later down the line. I don't think there's a better opportunity of waiting that triple captain later down the line. If you're not already on assistant manager, or if you haven't already used your triple captain, I would play it this week in 25. Now, strategy 2 is more if the majority of the blanks from game week 34, the FA Cup semi-finals, get organised into game week 36. So 36 is the bigger double game week. Now then I would wildcard in 35 to set myself up for that bench boost in 36. My free hit would probably be used in 34 to manage the blanks, and my triple captain / AM chip would be used between 31 to 33, where potentially there might be 1 or 2 doubles flicked in there. So that's sort of how I would strategize to use my chips over that period of time. A real quick run through on the chips, and obviously a recap of which game weeks are optimal. Assistant manager you can have for 3 weeks. They cost 0.5 to 1.5 million. You score points based on their team's results. Check out my other video on everything you need to know on the assistant manager chip, where I talk through the point scoring and how that works. I'll leave a link for it up above in the video. So go back and check that out if you're unsure on how point scoring works and why this is such a high points usage chip. Of course, maximising points, you could look to get the bonus points for teams lower down. If you do use it between 36 to 38, you might be able to maximise those bonus points by the fact that some teams have nothing to play for over those 3 games. Perhaps Liverpool have already won the league. They're putting out their reserve team because they might be in some European Cups, or well, they're out of the FA Cup now, so maybe they're still in the European Cups and they're putting out more sort of reserve teams to rest their players. Or some other teams higher up the table have nothing to play for, can't make it into Europe, and some relegation battling teams need the points and wins. So definitely something to consider there. Free hit chip, optimal week for me I think is 34 at the moment. If it so happens that there are multiple double game weeks, say there are 3 double game weeks over the back half of the season between 31 and 36, then you could perhaps play a free hit in one of the doubles, a triple captain or an assistant manager in one of the doubles, and also your bench boost in one of the other doubles. So if there are 3, maybe you can move that free hit. Otherwise, I'd recommend just using it in the big blank in 34. Triple captain chip, again, if you haven't used it and you haven't used your assistant manager chip, 25 is the best week for your triple captain chip. This week, I would use it on Mo Salah. Otherwise, if you're already using your assistant manager chip, or if you've already used your triple captain, then that's fine. If you're in the assistant manager already, I would use the triple captain between 31 and 33, likely on a Newcastle double game week on Alexander Isak, or potentially on 36. Maybe you have a Man City double, perhaps you have a Man City double in 33, and you could use on Haaland or fplfocal. That is my optimal triple captaincy. Wildcard and bench boost. I like to use the wildcard right before the bench boost. The reason for this is you can set up your team with 15 players in your team that are all going to double the next week. That gets you 30 fixtures in a bench boost. That is so huge, and allows you to really maximise your bench boost. So definitely would look to play your wildcard the week before your bench boost, or perhaps if you're setting up a little bit in advance and you want the wild card, and the fixtures work and the players work for the next few weeks, then you could perhaps say use your wildcard in game week 30, still bench boost in game week 33, and shift your team with a couple of transfers to get to 15 players for that bench boost. So I'd definitely look to do that. I'd obviously look to use the bench boost in a double game week to maximise the points that you can score with that. So finally, this is the summary of my optimal chip strategy. These are the best weeks that I think you should use all of the chips, regardless of where you are at the moment, how many chips you've used. I think I've talked through all the strategies and where I would use everything. Again, if there is anything that I've not covered for your specific team, please post below in the comments. I'll do a detailed look at your team. I'll make sure to give you a detailed answer on when I think you should use your chips and why, and feel free to, we can talk through it. Again, I'll also be doing team reviews on the deadline stream this week, where I can talk through your team and future transfer plans, etc., to help get you over the line. Please remember to like this video if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel if you found it useful. It's really helpful for me getting those extra likes, extra subscribes. Really help this small channel continue to grow. We're currently on 1,000 subscribers and on that push to 2,000. So I really appreciate all of you guys that do help to increase this channel. Thank you so much for watching. This has been your English Aussie. Have a great week, guys, and catch you later.